Welcome to the Inferno Cast. Today we are here with Andrea KGB Lee, UFC fighter, kickboxer, boxer, all-around full martial artist. How's everything going down south, Andrea?
It's good. You know, we're all quarantined here, so.
Yeah, I see that you're getting outside a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not that quarantined. I mean, I'm not gonna sit in my house, you know, and be afraid to step outside. So I'm still getting my workouts in.
Yeah, so it looks like you're getting a little bit of track work in today. So are you able to stay pretty busy and physical active, you know, as far as doing your workouts?
I have been. I got pads earlier today. I lifted weights, and I also got my run in. And I bought some like agility equipment, some battle ropes and stuff. So I mean, I've been kind of making some stuff up and staying as active as I can. You know.
Yeah. You're prepping and doing what it takes. That's awesome. So just a real quick background. You know, me and Andrea met years ago at the IKF, which is the International Kickboxing Federation. It's an amateur kickboxing circuit, probably one of the most prominent in the world. A lot of good competition there. You've competed there a few times, right? Or was it just the 1 year?
No, yeah, I competed there twice.
Yeah, okay, yeah, because I knew that there's a little bit there. But my first question was your first introduction into martial arts. What did that look like? How old were you? Kind of what got you involved with it?
My first introduction, I was 20 years old actually, and you know, I had always been interested in martial arts, and I had always wanted to do it, but I grew up in Atlanta, Texas, and there they didn't really offer any martial arts in any form. So it wasn't until I was 20 that I actually found a gym and started training. And I really started focusing on boxing at first.
Okay.
Because my coach, you know, he was like, I wanted to do MMA. I mean, that's what I came in there. I was like, because at the time I had a friend who said he had a cage fight coming up. I was familiar with the UFC, but they were referring to it as cage fighting. So I was like, I want to fight in a cage. I'm like, that's what I want.
Yeah. I think we've all had that moment. That's where we show up to somebody. Like when I first met Dring, I was like, well, I just want to be a cage fighter. And now I look back and I'm like, oh man, you know, but hey, youthful ignorance, right? We just want to be tough. So you first got into boxing. How long was it before you started competing in boxing?
5 months.
Oh wow, you jumped in quick.
I did. So, but I was training every day. I was getting a lot of one-on-one because I was going at an earlier time than everyone else, and I would train from like 11 till about 2, and then I would rush home. I'd get ready and be at work at about like 3:45. So I mean, like I was getting a good amount of time in, you know, every day. And I was like, I got hooked. When I got hooked, I got hooked. I mean, I was going there religiously every day. And, you know, that allowed me to progress quicker and be able to fight within 5 months.
Yeah. So first time you got in the ring, first of all, what did your family think?
Well, my dad came to watch me, and they were all nervous. You know, they didn't want me to get hit in my face. My dad's real protective, and he was like, I just don't know about all that, Annie. I don't want you getting hurt. And now he's like my biggest fan.
Oh, yeah, of course.
But I went out there, and the first time it was like, well, I wore glasses at the time, and I didn't have my contacts, so I wasn't wearing contacts then. So I had to fight blind. And I was walking out. I remember I forgot my mouthpiece. My brother had to run back to the stands to get my mouthpiece. And this was at the Louisiana Golden Gloves, the Louisiana State Golden Gloves. So he brings me my mouthpiece, you know, and I get in there, and, you know, I wish I got the footage, and it's actually really funny. I look ridiculous, but I ended up winning the fight. And after I got out of the ring, like I had to go straight to the bathroom and throw up because I was so, I don't know, all that adrenaline. I had never felt it before, not like that. And it was an eye opener, but I fell in love with it. It was so much fun. I looked silly out there.
Right.
For 5 months, you know, I was jumping around like a bunny rabbit and swinging wild shots. I got knocked down once and then got back up, and I ended up stopping her in the second round. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Cool. Yeah, won your first fight. That's cool.
And I was like, okay, so remember I'm blind. So, when the ref stops it, you have to go to the white corner and then they have to do the 8 count. So I'm sitting over there in my corner and Donnie's across the way and, or no, the girl's over there on the other side and he's counting. And then I guess he waves the fight. And I'm like, just standing there waiting. And like, you could see it in the video. Like, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And Donnie's like, you won.
It's over. You did it.
I'm like, oh shit, okay, because I'm like blind and I can't see anything. I couldn't see really what the ref was doing over there. So
Yeah.
I've had PRK though, and I got I had eye surgery, so I can see now without contacts or glasses. So
That helps because whenever when you take shots to the head and you have contacts in, like they flip out or they twist, and then you're in there messing with it in the middle of a fight. Yeah, that's definitely
yeah,
tough.
yeah.
So did you find yourself being a competitive person before boxing? Like, did you grow up just being that competitive? I'll do anything. I'll accomplish whatever I want, or was this something that happened later in life when you got closer to finding the gym?
Really more later in life. Though I really have always been, let's say, competitive. Um, and I've always loved sports, and I did play sports in high school, but I wasn't a great athlete or anything like that. I don't think I really applied or pushed myself. I didn't have a coach that pushed me either. Um, but when it was me just playing football with the guys, I'd go all out. I was always trying to prove myself, and I was always trying to tackle somebody. I was always trying to catch the ball. Like, I mean, like in that sense, like I was always trying to prove myself in a male sport. But then whenever I played volleyball, like I loved the sport, but I was easily intimidated, I guess, by the other girls, and I don't know. I didn't push myself like I should have because I was good, but
Yeah.
I just didn't push myself like I should have. And it wasn't until I started fighting that I really, was able to open up and become a better athlete.
So do you think that hindrance of becoming that athlete, do you feel like that was a confidence issue, an experience issue? Because, a lot of people battle that. I mean, even outside of the ring, just in their life in general, they kind of throttle things back because there's just a little apprehension or some fear in there or, concerned about what could happen.
It was a confidence issue. And, it is really all mental. And I realized that and I was able to correct that, I guess. Because I remember, because I would always go back to like, okay, so I like use volleyball as an example. Like I remember like when it happened to me twice, actually, I choked, like it was the last game that I was going to play for Florida because I was moving back to Texas, and I lived there for like a year, and I was playing volleyball, and I loved it there because they were serious about the sport, and so my coach puts me in and he's like, Lee's gonna make this shot. She never misses her serves, her serves, like he was just bragging about me. And I'm like, put all that pressure on me, So I went in there and like
Yeah.
I'm bouncing the ball and everybody has like a traditional thing that they do. So I bounce the ball, I spin it, and I felt that my spin was off in my hands. But I went ahead and I threw it up in the air and I went to serve it. I already knew, like I should have just let it drop, but I
Yeah.
didn't. I hit it, and in my mind I was like, oh shit, this is gonna hit the net, and it
Yeah.
did. It hit the net, and that was kind of like that was the last time that I was in there, because it was at the end of the game. They needed me to make that serve. I didn't make it. The same thing
Yeah.
happened to me when I got back to Texas. It was the last game that I was going to play. It was my senior year, and it was the last game that I was going to play ever, and so it really meant something to me. And I got out there, and my coach was like, okay, you're in, and we were doing so good. I had already landed a couple of serves. I just needed to land like 2 more. And the same thing happened to me again. I got in my head, and I ended up missing the serve. My traditional spin and everything was off. But like I remember that and I was like, man, I let myself get in my own head and
Yeah.
and stop myself from being able to enjoy that, and being able to push
Yeah.
myself and do better because I could have. So now in this sport, it's like I don't take it for granted. Like I try not to let myself get in my own head. I mean, you're the only one out there. Like it's not a team sport, so all the pressure, it's on you. It's not on anybody else. So it's like if you lose, you're the one out there. I mean, yeah, your team, they feel your pain, but it's all on you. So it drives me and it motivates me and it pushes me, and yeah, I think it's made me stronger mentally.
Absolutely. I mean, I would agree with that. If you were going to be talking to some girls out there playing volleyball in high school, and you know that that's what they're running into, what would you tell them to help them deal with that same pressure that they're feeling in that moment when the serve comes?
I would just say, I don't put all of that pressure on you. I mean, because there is a lot of pressure on you because it's a team sport and you feel like you're going to be letting everybody down if you don't make the serve. So I would say just don't do that. Try to like keep all those negative thoughts out of your mind. Don't put that type of pressure on you. Just go out there and have fun and enjoy it, because I don't feel like I really enjoyed it. I just put too much pressure on myself.
Yeah. And that's funny you say that. That's not the first time I've heard that. When I was younger, I got to go train at Team Quest with all those guys, and I remember one day after practice, the head coach and Randy was there, and they came over and they're like, "Kaleb, you're putting so much pressure on yourself in practice. Like, this is just practice, man." And they're like, "You got to enjoy the process." And at that time, like, I didn't know what that meant. All I knew was, you guys are the best in the world. I want to be the best in the world, because I'm 21, 22. And I was just like, I don't understand what you mean. Just that enjoying the process and just having fun with what you're doing in the sport, and you're not so worried about the end result the whole time. And and I feel like that's kind of resonating with what you're saying. Is like, I mean, that feels like the same advice that I was given almost 20 years ago. Was like, you just gotta enjoy it and can't put all this pressure on yourself. I think that's really good advice. So the transition to kickboxing, boxing, loving it, adding tools, now there's punches and kicks. How did it come up? Was that always part of the plan? How did that go?
Yeah, it was definitely always part of the plan. So first we got used to boxing, getting our hands and our head movement, our footwork in sync, and finally I could start working the kicks. So we started focusing on going to a lot of tournaments, IKF, kickboxing, getting all of the Muay Thai experience that I could in before really transitioning to MMA. Now I did end up having some MMA fights between all of this, but I didn't do as good because I was just boxing. So my first MMA fight was at the end of 2011, and all I did was try to outbox the girl, and they kept telling the girl, because I remember they kept saying, use your Muay Thai, and it wasn't until she started using her Muay Thai that she ended up winning and beating me because of that. So I was like, I need to work on my kicks. I need to work on my Muay Thai, my kickboxing. I was like, I know I can be better, well-rounded. So it wasn't until after that I really started to get to work on my kicks and working on my Muay Thai. And so we kind of stepped away from MMA for a little bit and started focusing on that and hitting all the circuits. So that really helped me to, it helped to better, it helped to make me better well-rounded,
Yeah.
And in the meantime, I'm still working on my jiu-jitsu too. But I would say that the IKF tournaments, the WKA, and the one out in Iowa, I can't remember what that one's called.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I would say that they helped me out a lot.
TBA, I think, is the Thai boxing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say all of that experience really helped me, 100%. It really turned me into a better fighter, a better striker.
Yeah.
Because I had to focus on. I didn't have to worry about anybody taking me down, but I had to work on I had to work on my kickboxing and my Muay Thai, because Donnie was having me do both. He was like, okay, so we're gonna sign you up for kickboxing and Muay Thai at the same time. He's like, that way that at least you get some competition, but it also made me have to remember the rules, because the rules are different. So I had to know what to do and what not to do.
Which, that's a good approach too, because it's almost like weightlifting in the gym. You do movements with resistance with weights, just like with martial arts. When you have to put the mental burden on yourself of what's the rule set, can do this, can't do that. It increases your processing power to where if you're able to keep track of rule sets and what you can and can't do, you know, that kind of opens up your perspective whenever you're in a combat sport, as far as, you know, reading opponents and finding their gives and, you know, running your plan. Because I'm sure you can remember the first couple fights when it's like the fight's over and it's like, I don't even know what just happened. You know, it just so much overwhelmed with nerves until you get your composure. So then my question would be, in kickboxing, do you remember like a defining fight or a moment in which you felt like you had the composure, like you were in control and you felt relaxed in the ring?
I would say I fought this girl named Christy. I can't pronounce her last name. Christy Tykingwenko. I can't remember, but she was really good. She was really solid kickboxer, and she threw like a lot of fancy kicks. You know, she threw like a lot of high kicks, spinning kicks, and I remember fighting her at the WKA, and she was the one that was supposed to win that tournament. I ended up winning.
Yeah, the underdog pulled through. That's awesome.
Yeah, but so her and we met up, and I remember they had this like they had like a TV crew following her around. I guess they were doing like a reality show or whatever. And so like she was the one that was supposed to win the tournament, and then she fought me. But I remember fighting, and every time she would throw like a spinning heel kick or a big high, like I was a head kick, like I kept rolling under them because she was throwing them pretty high. So I mean, every time that she would, it's like I would just like roll under it, and then I'd be able to counter her, or I'd catch the kick and then, you know, trip her. Even though I mean that's not necessarily something that you can do like in kickboxing, but I mean, I think that fight was probably the defining moment, because I mean I fought a girl that was supposed to win, and she really was better than me. Technically, she was much better than me, but I was just able to keep my composure, and I was able to go out there and just outstrike her with my hands, and I landed a lot of great kicks too as well. But I was able to like slip and roll and like move and evade everything that she was throwing for the most part, and it just ended up being like a really fun fight for me, and I was happy I got my
Where was that fight at?
It was in West Virginia.
Okay, because I couldn't remember if that was one that was down in Florida or not, but
I ended up fighting her again in Florida.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I fought her one more time, and I beat her again. But she fought me. Now, like, if it had been kickboxing, she probably would have won the fight. But the thing is like, because she signed up for Muay Thai, she wasn't taking into account that sweeps counted. You know what I mean? So every time that I caught her kick, I would dump her, and I dumped her so many times. She was landing a lot of great stuff, but those score really high. And even though it didn't score high for me in kickboxing, but it did for the Muay Thai fight, and I ended up getting the win in that too. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. So after that moment or that fight, how did that affect the next time you stepped into the ring? Like, was it just a new you? Like you were just a new athlete? You know, the next fight, it was just like, this is where I belong. You know, I'm not in the ring with you. You're in the ring with me.
No, I don't ever think that I get big-headed, like, in that sense. I mean, I do feel confidence and stuff, and with every win and every fight that I have, you know, with each experience, it does make me a better fighter. But I don't go into every fight thinking that way, because I don't want to start believing my own hype or you know, get caught up in the idea that I'm better than somebody, because then that's when you get caught. So I always go in thinking that my opponents are better than me. That way that I'm always on guard, and I'm always ready for whatever it is that they're going to throw at me. You know, the experience makes me better, but it doesn't make me cocky or it doesn't make me feel like, it makes me feel more confident, but you know what I'm trying to say?
It's almost like, so maybe you don't feel unstoppable. You just feel confident in your skills.
Right. Yeah. Because everybody is stoppable.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, it's like everybody's undefeated till they're not. You know,
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I was talking to one of the guys the other day about, I mean, I feel sorry for guys that have been undefeated for a long time because that's a lot of stress. That's a lot of pressure.
It
And
really is.
and you learn so much from the losses. I mean, you really do. And you know, nobody likes to talk about that piece, and it's never fun when it happens, but a lot of times how we deal and cope with our losses is usually what defines our successes. So
True.
I think that you know, that's a good perspective on it. So during the kickboxing time, you're doing some jujitsu. Was that something that came naturally? Was it fun? Did you enjoy it, or was it like the reluctant, like, well, I got to do this too, so let's get it done?
It was like that. Yeah. I wasn't as eager to do jujitsu. I really loved striking, you know, and that was like my favorite part, you know. So it really took me a while to like get into like the mindset that this is fun, you know what I mean, and enjoyable. And it wasn't until like Donnie started like sending me to like jujitsu tournaments. He's like, okay, we're going to do these jujitsu tournaments, or you know. So I remember he put me in. He was like, He's like, you're gonna do gi. He bought me a gi, and he was like, we're gonna do no gi and gi as white belt division. And I didn't know anything in the gi, so um, I went down to Longview to work with Derek Krantz. And I was like, I just need to learn a few things in the gi. Can you show me a couple of submissions? Or
He probably looked at you like, what do you mean just a few things in the gi?
I'm like, show me some grips and stuff. Like, I don't know anything. And he goes down. I mean, like, I go down there and he shows me like a few things. I remember he shows me the bow and arrow choke, and he shows me a baseball choke. And those are the two things that I use. And I actually ended up submitting the girls with a baseball choke and a bow and arrow choke. So I was like,
Awesome.
this ain't so bad. This is kind of fun, you know?
Yeah, you're like, I can learn stuff.
I just learned it like literally like right before I went to that tournament. I ended up actually executing it. So it's kind of cool.
Awesome.
But it's all that I knew. But it wasn't until I started doing like all of the jujitsu tournaments that I really started to embrace it and really focus on it and get much better at it, you know.
Was
I'm
there a turning
actually,
point?
huh?
Was there a turning point with the grappling to where you were like, it started affecting you on more of a cerebral level? Because like usually with jiu-jitsu people, there's a point in which it's physical up into a point of like doing moves, and then it becomes cerebral where it's like chess. You know, it's this elaborate game that you're just trying to unlock. Was there, you know, was there a point that you ran into that?
Oh yeah. And after competing, because I mean we would go to like so many tournaments. So it was like after a little bit, like I was already like you know, it's not all, a lot of it's mental, you know, and it's mind and mind game. And I mean, you just have to know how to go out there and beat your opponent. So of course I'm like sizing everybody up, you know. And the moment that we step on the mat, you know, we do shake hands. So a lot of the times, like I would be able to base what type of match I was going to have based on our handshake. So like I would shake a girl's hand, and if it was one of those like little dainty, their hands felt really soft, or it was elegant or whatever, I knew that I was going to be able to have my way with them. I was like, okay, I'm going to go out here and I'm going to out wrestle her. I'm going to be aggressive, you know, I'm going to take her down. And that's normally what happened. I would have girls who would shake me pretty firmly. I'm like, okay, this girl's coming. You know, she's
Hmm.
tough.
Yeah.
And that would kind of be how I would gauge, you know, how I was going to execute the beginning of the match, you know.
Well, then that brings me into the stare down. So, like, how
Yeah.
does that transition into stare downs? That means, because if that was meaning something then you've got to have a system on the stare down. So, is there something on that stare down when you're having to look them in the eye? Like, is that an indicator?
Oh yeah. I mean, I like to look. We look, are both looking at each other in the eye, you know, and you're kind of like seeing, are they shaking? Is their hand shaking? Or are they being fidgety? Or they're trying to smile? Are they not trying to smile? I mean, like, you know, it all means something, you know. And I
Yeah.
normally go out there and I'm just kind of like, don't knock my hat off. That's all. Just don't.
The one request.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm just like, please just don't knock my hat off. But like, I can't help it. Sometimes I smile, and sometimes I can stand there and be all serious, you know. It just really depends. Sometimes it doesn't really mean anything, you know.
Yeah.
But a lot of the times it does, because a lot of people are head cases, you know, and you know, you can get in. Some people let you get into their head, you know, because
Right.
they're mental cases.
Yeah, it's part of the game.
It is.
Yeah, definitely
It
part of
is.
the
Some
game.
people are beaten at the stare down. Some people get beat at the stare down.
Yeah, that's true. It reminds me of Tito Ortiz versus Randy Couture, because Tito had all this momentum at the time, and when he fought Randy, Randy didn't play into the mind games, because Tito was always a pusher, just like get in your head, antagonize, and Randy never played that, and like it's almost like Tito needed that for him to kind of do well or like kind of get in his rhythm, and Randy kind of pulled him out of it by being like the nice guy athlete that was like, oh no, man, I'm just here to fight. It'll be fun. And I see what you're saying, where there's some people that run mental plays, and whenever you disrupt that mental rhythm for them, they don't know what to do. They're like,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
supposed to be angry back, and you're not. So,
I would say Roxy's one of those, because she's always just happy-go-lucky. Like you can't really like get her mad.
yeah, those are the tough ones, because especially people that depend on their emotional intensity.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like they got to get their emotions riled up to get that part of them to come out. And so when you made the transition to MMA, do you remember your first fight, first of all? First MMA fight, you remember?
Yes. Okay. So my first MMA fight was like, okay, so it was about 4.5 months after I gave birth to Ainsley in 2011. So, I had like a 2 months to really prepare for that fight, because they only give you, or they recommend you like not to do any type of working out or anything after, for like 6 weeks after you've had a baby. So as soon as they told me that I could train, and that 6 weeks was up, like I dove right in, and
your first thought is, I had a baby and now I want an MMA fight. Makes total sense.
Because I had already 9 months, I had to like put everything on hold. So, I was eager to get a fight. And the first girl that I fought, her name was Jade. I can't remember her last name, but I'd seen her fight before, and I think she was like 3-0 at this time. And I was like, man, I know I can go out there and beat her. So I accepted that fight, and I ended up losing a decision. But the reason that I lost, because I didn't know anything on the ground, and it was just such a sloppy fight. And I definitely learned a lot from it. But it was one of those where, had I kept it standing and not really like fallen to the ground, because I've fallen is what happened. Because it was like, I remember like she was on the ground and I'm like standing up, and then she like grabs my leg and I like fall over, and I don't know. I was just super sloppy.
Yeah.
It was so sloppy. And at one point I had her in a guillotine position, which I knew nothing about the guillotine position. And then one time I had her in a triangle position, which I had no idea what a triangle was at that time. I mean, I had so many opportunities to execute some positions, but I didn't know I had anything, So,
right, yeah, you were new and you didn't know. And the reason I ask if you remember it, because my question is, was there something about fighting MMA that was different than boxing and kickboxing for you? Was it like MMA was everything you expected it to be? Was that like, the defining time that this was going to be your goal? Did it feel any different than the other competitions?
it did feel a lot different, because there was so much more that you had to worry about. There was so much more that you could do, and I was looking forward to that, because I really love I love the violent side of it. You know what I mean? Like the ground and pound, and the knees, and one day I wanted to be able to throw elbows, and in Louisiana you can grab the head and throw knees to the head. In other states, that rule's not allowed, but in Louisiana you can do pretty much anything the pros can do, except for throwing elbows, and I think all leg locks are allowed now. So I mean, pretty much everything but elbows. And so, that was kind of one of the things that I was looking for. And that I learned real quick that I needed to learn jiu-jitsu.
So tell us about your jiu-jitsu journey. You started, you went down, did the private lesson, did the tournament. So now, you're a brown belt. What's that look like for the last several years?
for the last several years, I mean, like there for a little bit, you know, I was going up, 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 up. Now it's kind of like I'm just kind of like because I haven't really, because I've been so focused on doing a little bit of everything here and there. So I'm striking, I'm wrestling, I'm, you know, grappling with MMA strikes, and I'm not really getting enough like just jujitsu focusing, you know? So I really want to get back into maybe getting into some of the tournaments and get back into traveling and forcing myself to train and prepare for other like things such as like jiu-jitsu tournaments and, you know, pro grappling matches. Like I think all that would be really good and beneficial. So I'm really thinking about doing that on the side when I don't have a fight coming up.
Sure.
Because like I said, I'm like this right now. I was this and now I'm this.
A little bit of a plateau, which, you know, and everybody goes through it, especially when you're trying to be a mixed martial arts athlete, because you got to keep so many things sharp, you know. I mean, the physicality of just your workouts and the flexibility and the boxing, the kickboxing, the wrestling, you know, and just everything tied together, which takes us into the MMA phase. So when you started getting momentum as an MMA fighter, when do you feel like you knew you were like, I'm going to the UFC and I'm going to be the best in the world? Like, when did that cross your mind that that was a reality, that was something that you could achieve or you knew you were going to achieve? Like, when did it hit you that that was going to, you know, kind of be who you were?
Probably when I started really fighting for Invicta and Legacy. You know, because I started to get TV time and, you know, I was gaining fans and recognition. I was winning all of my fights. I mean, I knew early on that that was something that I felt was achievable, because I had so many fights as an amateur. You know, I had close to 50 fights, and I knew that I was well-rounded enough to finally turn pro. So it wasn't until like I guess I started fighting for Invicta and really shining. I mean, and I don't like to, you know, brag or anything, but I mean, I had some pretty exciting fights for Invicta, and I can remember every single one of them. Even my losses were exciting. So I had 2 losses for Invicta, and I just remember, you know, there was one fight I ended up losing, but Sean Shelby was there, and I was winning this fight. It was against Sarah DeLalio, and it was such a great fight. You know, I mean, everything was landing. Man, I freaking e-ponged her. But she ended up getting, at the end, it was like we had like 60 seconds left. I ended up slipping up and getting overzealous because I wanted to finish her, you know, and I wanted to make a statement, and I ended up giving up my back, and she ended up taking advantage of it. She got her rear naked choke in, she got her hooks in, and she flattened me out, and she subbed me out. Yeah. But Shannon told me that Sean Shelby was like very impressed by me and by my performance that night. So he was already looking at me. And so, you know, I knew it was just a matter of time. I just needed to get the fights and the experience and just, you know, work on that because I knew it was coming. I just didn't know when. And the fact that the 125 division hadn't opened yet was going to give me some more time to prepare and get ready for that stage. I was just waiting for them to open the gate, you know?
For sure.
So
I mean, and anybody that's seen you fight or has, you know, got to watch any of your performances, like, you know, you've always been an exciting fighter because you push the pace, you know, like you take the risks. But one thing that like I personally noticed over the years is the risks have gotten more and more calculated, you know, where it's just like there's some risk involved, but it's a calculated risk. And that experience has just really been showing as a professional. And that was one thing, as soon as you hit, because Legacy was before Invicta, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I can remember when you first made on Legacy, I remember talking to Dring about it because I was like, man, Andrea's gonna make it. Like I can tell she's gonna make it because just the skill set was there, and you were always just so happy to be there. You know, that was one thing. Like you always just had a lot of energy just to be a fighter, and it was always cool. And so I was just curious, you know, when you knew and you could feel that building, you know, for it to come. So when the UFC call came, how did that affect you? Was it, you know, yep, knew this was coming, I'm going to be ready for it? Was it the overwhelmed, surreal, like, is this even happening? Or was it just kind of like I'm going to sit and be quiet for about 20 minutes because I'm still processing? How did that go?
I actually got my first offer to fight was right after my fight for LFA. I was defending my title. I defended my title. I won, and like we're hanging out at the Horseshoe Casino in Louisiana, Shreveport. You know, here it was a hometown fight, luckily. And you know, Mick Maynard was there. He had watched the fights and stuff, and he came up to me and he asked me if I wanted to take a short notice fight against Jessica Eye, who was scheduled to fight Paige Van Zandt at that moment, but Paige got hurt, so Jessica Eye needed an opponent. And I was like, that's like 2 weeks from now. I was like, shit. Or it might have even been a week. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I was like, well, let me talk to Donnie. Let me get some advice on this. I was like, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. So we decided that we were going to take the fight. And so we got the contract sent over to us, you know, and they kind of threw us a little bit more, you know, because it was a short notice fight.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we signed the contract, but then it ended up falling through because you know, a year or so prior, I had that I failed the drug test for
diuretic.
A diuretic, yes.
Yeah.
I used a fluid pill to help me cut weight, and so they suspended me, which I had I did my suspension. I came back and I fought, but then it was like, okay, well now you got to go into the USADA testing pool for 6 months before you can fight for the UFC. So we had to do that, and so for 6 months I didn't fight again until I made my debut in Chile against Veronica Macedo. But I mean, like getting the fight offer, it was pretty cool. It was exciting. You know, it was after my fight with Jamie Thornton. I won that fight, and then they were like, okay, we want you to fight Jessica Eye, which was a big deal because she's in the top 10. So I mean, that was like right off the bat a top 10 opponent. I'm like, that's freaking awesome. But I didn't get that fight. But it still ended up being cool because I fought Veronica Macedo and we ended up getting fight of the night bonus. So, you know, it was cool.
Awesome. Yeah, that's one of those things where like sometimes, you know, delay isn't denial. You know, it'll come. That's one thing that, you know, my coaches told me many times over the years. But it's, you know, and I think it kind of falls into that. And because I'm always curious whenever when you get the call, did it build up your confidence or did it make you feel like, oh, now I need to become this higher level athlete? Or was it like a justification of course you're calling me, you know, I've been working my tail off and I deserve to be on that level. You know, how did it affect you on a confidence level? Did it build it or did it kind of make you want to just work harder?
Well, working harder, even though I was already working really hard, but I think that it didn't feel real really just yet. So for me, it was like I was just preparing for another fight. Even though it's for the UFC, I wasn't really preparing for it like that. In my mind, I'm thinking, okay, it's just another fight, you know, because I didn't want to get in my own head and get nervous about anything. So for myself, I just went ahead and prepared and thought about it as if it was just another fight for Legacy or Invicta, you know, and it wasn't really that big of a deal.
Yeah, until you show up to weigh-ins. Yeah, until you show up to weigh-ins, cameras everywhere, and everybody's talking and chatting. So the first UFC fight, how did it affect you just being in that environment? Because, you know, they're a little bit more organized on the press and on the stuff, so there had to have been more stuff going on. So how did that affect your prep and kind of your mental attitude going into the fight? Was it distraction? Was it no big deal? Was it exciting?
It was a lot, you know, and we're in another country. So, I mean, they had like a lot of media, and because they hadn't done media for me, and videography and all of that. So we had to get pictures, we had to do photo shoots, we had to do video, you know, for the TV and the face off, you know, the jumping around thing and the stare down, the stuff that they show in the prompts, you know, before the fight. And we did have a lot of like media to do. They really wanted to interview us because we were like the only females on the card. So we had a lot of media to do as well. Not just for the UFC and for, I think that was ESPN, or was that the last one on Fox? It was Fox. Anyways, it doesn't matter. But we also had to interview for the locals too, like the local television. So, cause they were trying to promote it there locally. And so like I had to do a lot of stuff for Chile and in Santiago. So I mean, yeah, it was a little bit different, you know, and it was a little bit more pressure. to squeeze all of that in and to find time to cut my weight. So, you know, I was worried about that, but ended up getting it done. It all worked out for the best.
Yeah.
The weigh-ins that was incredible. You know, there were so many people there. That was a cool weigh-ins. I enjoyed that, and I don't know. It's a good memory.
That's good. That's good. So now you're in the UFC. You're this professional athlete. You now have a platform on which to communicate to people. How real does that feel to you, as how much impact that you have in the world right now? Like, does it feel like you're this person that's able to influence and impact these people, or does it not feel like that very much? You just have this thing you go do in public sometimes. You know, how much of a burden does it put on you with just your role as a professional high-level athlete?
I mean, there is a little bit of a burden, I think, for anybody who's kind of in the spotlight, especially when I have a fight coming up, you know. So it's like people are really like Googling you, you know, and they're really trying to see who this person is. So you have to be careful with the things that you say and you do. You know, like even just like, let's just say, for example, talking politics, you know, I mean, something as simple as that. You don't want to talk about who you voted for. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, the fans that you had, you won't have the next day, you know, because I mean, people take that kind of stuff serious. So, I mean, you have to be very careful with the way that you express yourself in the public, you know, and you just have to portray this image, and I portray an image, you know. I mean, and it's true. I mean, I am who I am, but at the same time, there's still things that I don't put out there, because, you know, people get offended very easily, you know. And you just have to be careful. But I do enjoy the fact that I'm able to inspire and motivate so many people, you know, and I do get a lot of emails and messages like in my social media daily, you know, people telling me how I inspire them, you know, and that makes me feel really, really good. You know, it's, I don't know. I never thought that I would be able to inspire or motivate people, you know, but I mean, it's so many people. And I get like little kids, you know, and parents who reach out to me and they want me to send autographs because their child's maybe like a really big fan of mine, and even they're a fan of mine too, you know. So I don't know. It just, you know, makes me feel really good inside.
So,
you know? So it inspires me to want to be a good role model.
exactly. And that's kind of what I'm getting around to is like, what's the message, you know, that you're trying to convey? Like what do you want people to be looking at and evaluating in their own lives, you know, that you're trying to help inspire them with? Like what's the Andrea message that you're really trying to propagate to people?
I mean, I always have a message, I guess. But I mean, the main thing is just go out there and live your life, you know. I would like to say don't worry about offending people so much and just kind of be you. I mean, because I hate having to, you know, hold back and be. I mean, I'm always having to be careful with like the things that I say, you know. So I just feel like go out there, be yourself, you know, and just, you know, have fun, enjoy life, chase your dreams. I mean, because at one point I didn't think that being in the UFC, you know, I just thought this was going to be like a hobby and I was just going to do it for fun. I mean, and then one day I was like, you know what, I'm going to see where this takes me, and I'm not going to quit. I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to see where I end up at in the next 5-10 years. And it landed me here in the UFC, you know? So, you know, if you have a dream, whatever that may be, just go out, chase it, you know, don't give up on it. And make the sacrifices that you have to make. Just dedicate yourself. And, you know, in the end, all that hard work is going to pay off. But stay true to yourself, be you, and don't change for anybody. You know, that's all I can say.
That is awesome, Andrea. I appreciate you taking some time to talk to us today. I hope that everything's going well with you and you're able to keep getting your workouts in, and hopefully this whole, you know, pandemic thing will be over soon, or to where we can kind of get back to some degree of normalcy, and we'll definitely be following you and keeping in touch.
I appreciate it, Caleb. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, you are welcome. We'll be talking to you soon, okay?
Okay.